On January 2nd, 1935, around noon, a young man in a dark overcoat walked into the lobby of the hotel president. He asked for an inside room on a high floor, with no view of the street, room 1046. He paid for a single night. He carried no luggage, only a comb, a brush, and toothpaste pulled from his coat pocket. Staff would later note a visible scar on his temple and a cauliflower ear, signs he may have boxed or wrestled. In the hotel register, his name was Roland T. Owen, address Los Angeles. Later, police would learn the name was false, and that the same man had apparently stayed the previous night in a nearby hotel under yet another alias. But at the time, no one was alarmed. Chambermaid Mary Soptic later recalled that room 1046 was always kept dark, the curtains tightly drawn, a single lamp burning. The guest asked her to leave the door unlocked. "I'm expecting friends." At 4 p.m., she brought fresh towels and noticed a note on the table. "Don, I will be back in 15 minutes. Wait." The name Don would surface again in this strange case. On the evening of January 2nd, hotel staff saw the young man leaving and returning, not alone this time. A local witness, a driver named Robert Lane, later reported that around 11 p.m., a young man in just a shirt with a fresh scratch on his arm ran up to his car, jumped in, and muttered that tomorrow someone's going to be killed. Lane dropped him off at a taxi stand, and after the man's death identified him as the same person. The reliability of this episode remains disputed, but it did make its way into the police reports. On the morning of January 3rd, Mary Soptic entered room 1046 again. The room was dark, and Owen was sitting in a chair, speaking into the phone in a low tone, as if he didn't want anyone to overhear. Several times she caught the name Don, as though the caller kept the young man on a tight leash. That evening, a woman came to room 1046. Witnesses on the floor heard men's voices and muffled footsteps, but no one saw a fight or heard an argument. Once again, the room sank into darkness. January 4th, 7 a.m. On the hotel switchboard, a white light is glowing again. The phone in room 1046 is off the hook. Bellboy Randolph Probst goes up to the 10th floor. The Do Not Disturb sign hangs on the door. He knocks. A hoarse male voice from the darkness says, "Come in. Turn on the light." But the door is locked from the inside. Probst leaves. At 8:30, the light is on again. Another employee checks and finds the phone ripped from its base and thrown to the floor. Still, no one answers the door. Only at 11 o'clock do they manage to get inside. When the duty manager, alarmed by a third signal, opens the room with a master key, what he sees is a nightmare. The young man is on his knees, his forehead resting on the bed, covered in blood. The walls, sheets, and floor are spattered as if someone had dragged him around the room. There are strangulation marks on his neck, stab wounds in his chest and side, skull fractures on his head. His ankles are bound with cord. The phone is on the floor again. The window is shut, the curtains drawn. The door chain is latched from the inside. Police and medics are stunned. How could an attacker vanish from such a locked room? In the ambulance, the young man regains consciousness for a moment. Asked, "Who did this to you?" He whispers, "Nobody. I fell, hit my head on the tub," and lapses back into unconsciousness. At the hospital, he dies later that day from a combination of blunt force injuries, stab wounds, and strangulation. On him, no wallet, no documents. Only a comb, cigarettes, and a cheap tie clip. The name Roland T. Owen will prove to be a fiction. The body lay in a funeral home for almost 2 months. Police waiting, hoping someone would identify the young man. When no one came forward, they prepared to bury him as unknown. Then a call came to a local newspaper. A woman's cold voice said, "Your report is wrong. The boy will have a proper funeral." The next day, an envelope arrived at the funeral home containing $25, neatly wrapped in newspaper, enough to cover the burial. A florist received more money with a card signed, "Love Forever, Louise." At the funeral, the only living attendees were the minister and several detectives, who even posed as grave diggers and kept watch over the fresh grave for days, in case someone came to visit. No one did. The anonymous callers had phoned from street payphones, and the identity of Louise was never discovered. Only in the summer of 1936 did a photograph of the head wound on the unknown man make its way into newspapers across the country. In Alabama, a woman named Ruby Ogletree recognized her son, Artemus Ogletree, 19 years old. He had hitchhiked west in 1934 and wrote home only occasionally. But here's the strange part. After the date of his death, the family received letters, typed, written in an oddly mature style, in which Artemus supposedly described his travels, even claiming to have gone as far as Egypt. Then, in August 1935, a man from Memphis phoned Ruby Ogletree, saying Artemus was in Cairo and would write soon. Shipping lines found no record of Ogletree ever crossing the ocean, and his mother said the letters didn't sound like her son. It looked as if someone else was writing, trying to cover up his death. Inside room 1046, police found only the faintest traces, almost no fingerprints, no knife or other weapon. The name Don had come up in phone conversations, appeared in the note, and according to witnesses, an unknown man had visited the room the night before the murder. In 1937, detectives briefly thought they had a lead. In New York, a man named Donald Kelso, known by the nickname Don, was arrested in connection with another killing. The press quickly pointed out the coincidence, but investigators found no evidence directly linking him to room 1046, and the case went cold once again. In 2012, historian John Horner of Kansas City, Missouri Valley Room, KC Public Library, carefully reconstructed the story of room 1046. At the end of his research, he revealed one chilling detail. In 2003 or 2004, a man from another state called him. While sorting through the belongings of a deceased relative, the caller said he had found a box of newspaper clippings about the Ogletree case and an item mentioned many times in the papers. He refused to give his name or identify the item. Police never saw it, and the case slipped back into mystery. But that call reinforced one unsettling idea. Someone has been carrying this secret across generations and still fears to speak it aloud. How could it happen physically? A locked room, without magic. The classic puzzle. Doors and windows sealed from the inside, yet a dying man lies within. But forensic experts often warn that locked rooms can be deceiving. The door chain could have been hooked shut from outside with a cord. The window could have been closed later using a stick or string. Quite possible with older frames. The attacker might have left earlier, while Ogletree's bleeding continued, creating the illusion of a fresh crime scene. Even the phone being off the hook 3 times on the morning of the murder may have been part of the plan, to stall hotel staff, keeping them concerned but hesitant to break in. More telling are the injuries. Ogletree's ankles were bound, there were strangulation marks, and several stab wounds. That hardly fits an accident, even his own words. I fell. Sound more like intimidation, as if he feared someone far more than death itself. Working Theories, Version 1. Criminal Conflict. Artemus was young, physically strong, used different names, and reportedly tried to enter pro wrestling under an alias. He may have gotten involved with a criminal patron, a man called Don, and ended up in debt. The interior hotel room with no view was ideal if you didn't want to be seen from the street. The lesson turned fatal. The anonymous funeral in Louise could have been either a woman connected to Don or an old acquaintance of Artemus who was ordered to cover things up neatly. Version 2. Jealousy in a Woman. Some 1930s newspapers mentioned a female visitor that night. It could have been a love triangle. Don comes later, threatens, attacks. The woman helps stage the scene. The note, the lamp, the phone, the love forever Louise card. Against this theory, no evidence against any woman and total silence from the neighbors on the floor. Version 3. Set up an alternate identity. Ogletree left home as a teenager, wrote short, scattered letters, yet after his death, letters suddenly appeared in an oddly adult style. Someone tried to build a legend that he had gone far away. The 1935 call to his mother from Memphis, "He's in Cairo," fits the pattern. If a group was behind it, arranging a funeral made sense to close the case, and signing it Louise proved nothing. Version 4. A locked room staging. It's technically possible that Ogletree, still alive after the attack, moved around the room himself, leaving traces, while the assailant left earlier and carefully secured the room. Multiple staff visits, the "do not disturb" sign, the phone off the hook, all delayed discovery. But who would plan this so precisely and why? No weapon, almost no fingerprints, as if an experienced hand was at work. Police in the 1930s worked without DNA, cameras, or fingerprint databases. The crime scene offered almost no evidence. The hotel swarmed with witnesses, their testimonies conflicting. The press quickly dubbed it the ghost room, but within a few years, other crimes stole the headlines. Artemus himself, a runaway youth constantly changing names, made any traditional investigation nearly impossible. Too many ifs. The case was revisited several times, even compared to a 1937 New York murder. Yet no solid link emerged. Still, according to reports, Kansas City police technically keep it open, just in case the crucial item from the box ever surfaces. The President Hotel still stands, restored, glowing with neon, carrying its history. Tourists stay on floors above and below, while room 1046 lingers like a coat of paint over an old crack. Some mysteries endure not because they lack facts, but because those facts have been arranged too neatly by someone who needed us to look and not see. In the late 1960s, Ruby Ogletree said she believed, "Maybe not today, but someday we'll learn the truth." Nearly a century has passed, and somewhere, perhaps a box still waits, filled with clippings, a notebook, small scraps that would close the loop. Until it's revealed, Dawn remains only a voice in the dark, and the card will keep whispering, "Love forever, Louise."